My background is metal, jazz, IDM, drum and bass. Been releasing since 2000. Been trying to not repeat the same style of music or get entrenched in any sort of like aesthetics for my active period.
I've been producing for less than him. I think I've been DJing for 10 years or more now. I lost count. And started producing mainly because I was missing some sounds in my sets and I really wanted to get it out in the form of production. So I guess that's why I'm here. So we shared this space since 5 years prior or a little bit more. Mess obviously has a lot of background in production and I was at that time more starting off. So it wasn't even like a thought to collaborate at the beginning, just because of the difference in the production style, in the technique and all the more basic things, I would say. Then in the pandemic, things got a little bit flat in terms of gigs and inspiration, and then we thought it might be a good idea to then get inspired by each other.
There was also a little bit of teasing that went before the pandemic, before we got locked together in the studio, where I was very I mean, you can't move to Berlin and not listen to techno. So it was more, I was really interested in the style of techno that Liza was playing for a lot of time. And it started out as studio mobbings, that techno was slow. It's like the elevator music version of drum and bass. And then instead of like just having these entrenchments, then we started, okay, let's maybe try to bridge this and see if we can find some intersections in between what it is that we are doing. And in terms of aesthetics, there was a lot of things that we really agree on. Like we're both using field recordings really heavily. We're both quite fond of all synthesizers, modular systems, and how it's also applied in terms of layering and making a production out of it. So there were some things that needed a more firm handshake and a lot of like talk, but when you're in a small apartment in the pandemic, then there's lots of time to talk. I think we both agree on that we are trying to create the music that doesn't exist. So basically it's starting off from really from the base level, where we try to clear ourselves of any sort of like references to others, because then obviously you start navigating your sound towards wanting to sound like the reference that you have. But both of us are also going to clubs for energy, and it was more like, I would say the energy in the music was more like the intersection where we have that we agreed on that this would be the frame of reference. And then basically I had the experience that the music was basically writing itself within this tabula rasa.
I don't think there was a specific thought, oh, let's do this general, let's do that, because what we separately produce is so different anyway, that it didn't really mix on a superficial level, but maybe in a more fundamental level, stylistically, like harder sounds, a lot of percussion, and these kind of things we agree in, but maybe there was some talks about dialing back a little bit some of the more harsh bass lines, I would say, that Mess really likes, that I call animals, and more like the pad sounds that I really try to put a lot, like a carpet bombing everything with pads, and he wanted to dial that back, so no style restriction, more like technical thoughts, really, I would say.
But you're right, the bass lines was definitely one of the more diplomatic points where we had to make a compromise instead of saying, I do the bass lines on this, and it was tearing up the entire track, and then basically having to fit the frame. So I would say that our approach has been very sensitive and extremely respectful for each other's domains, and really in the spirit of collaboration and compromise as well.
I will say there is a basic level of aggression probably. You can feel it also like in the bass is a little bit raw, or how dense the rhythms are. And that's kind of, I feel sometimes in my head I have all this confusion, and the rhythms are you know, very, very present and very scattered all over. And but there is this element also of pads and more like soft sounds that is, I think, representative of both our personalities maybe. So quiet, but also strong in a way.
So this is the carrying, one of the carrying tracks of the EP called Remnant, and we open this up. We want to show you some of the things that we talked about with taming bass animals, especially in the bass region here. So I've opened up what we have on the bass channel right now. I can maybe just unfold the group. What we're looking at right here is basically what we'll just briefly be talking about, which is one of the bass lines in the drop that sounds like this. And what we talked about was how to actually tame these sounds and make it fit into the context of the rest of the song. We're going to show you in just a bit. But I have a similar patch on the cork. So basically the bass sound usually sounds like this. Something like that. And we have a piece of old Australian equipment sitting on the main bus of the bass, which is these run-down consoles over there that make the bass sound like very, very distorted, very teethy, and also very present. And then after disabling this tank strip, it sounds like this. And basically what we did was to disable these tank strips to make this fit a lot better with the track that we're making, to make sure that there was space for Elisa's pads, and also that the drums were not completely overpowered by this one bass sound. That's basically what we did also to tame the sound and make the aesthetics fit each other somehow.
So as spoke before, we said that we both really like field recordings. I think generally because it really gives an organic feel to the mix, and it really adds a more personal element that machine probably can't really replicate, although obviously we modify the sounds and we usually don't just let it as it is. They require generally a little bit of cleaning. I would say, for instance, here it's interesting. Those recordings were made in Handstone, where Mass come from. It's basically a fisherman sort of city. There is a lot of scraps from old boats, a lot of metal scraps, a lot of like really interesting things that you can find just parked around everywhere and record them. So for instance, here we got this one. So here it's kind of a metallic sort of sound, I would say, but as you can hear at this point already, it's highly modified. For me, it's really important to have something that reminds me of location or something relevant in our life, because when you are producing, then you think about it, and it kind of really makes sense. It's not just machines. So as you can see here, obviously you need to clean up a little bit the sound. We added some EQing, again some nice Eventide plugin, the Ultra channel, and again some reverb to give it a little bit more space. And it would be nice to see now here I mute all those effects and the EQ, and then you will hear the sound as it was. Pretty different. So maybe this was a more electric sound that we just fetch in, probably even in the kitchen. Like, this is weird, but many times I hear stuff in the kitchen, or like knives, you know, when you're cooking or things like that, and we just recorded, and this at the end comes out like this. We do this like really often, and we also exchange samples, and I think it's really fun.
We were not that radical about it, because basically then you can take a plate and a fork and that will be a new piece of music that nobody heard before, but it's not very pleasurable. I would say that there was a lot of experience from both of us that tied into what is nice and what you would expect and what's a good narrative in a piece of music, that also came together with the ideal that we're just gonna not pay attention to anything else around us. I mean, we're not making the easiest type of music. We didn't strip it back to a formula that you can mix in these kind of things. So it's more trying to find something that gets your head bobbing and would motivate you to engage in the sound and actually pull people in with these hypnotic or aggressive elements. And then that's the aesthetic house that we built. I think we gave ourselves pretty much absolute freedom when it comes to form and function, that we really also took the entire expectation of a DJ, of a couch listener, of a person driving in a fast car on the German Autobahn, that this needs to be dialed out of it. That can be in your considerations when you sit down and actually write this music. And this was also a big part of the freedom that we actually allowed ourselves for this collaboration. And I think that this is also one of the reasons why it actually worked so well.
Yeah, also like thinking that you have to start the project thinking about a formula, or that it will need to land in this set like this or work for these people. It already makes me feel bored, honestly. I mean, this has been done so much already, so I don't need to do it as well.
It was about making the music that's not yet heard. I'm sure that there's something out there that's comparable and these kind of things, but not to our knowledge somehow. So a clear mind with a clean project and a clean slate somehow.
With Ever, I think it's very much broad, but how I see it is music for musicians. Aura, also the woman that owns the label as well, contacted me and asked for some demos if I had, and at that time we already made 2 tracks together. I had some tracks on my own, but I thought maybe this would be more interesting to send her this. I just sent it and she really liked it, and she asked if we could complete a full EP. I think the most important thing, if I may say, is that you had the feeling that you could do anything at all, genre-wise, and even the BPMs, you know, like more basic things. There wasn't any expectation.
But yeah, the dynamic and the conversations with the label was extraordinarily helpful and very open-minded. Like there was really like a big arena where we could do basically anything that we wanted, and they were like this soft guiding hand and helpful in that sense, instead of dictating what we needed to do.
With their vision of the label in general, it's really something that we are missing at this point in music. I think you would agree.
They were very much trying to center us as, please do your thing, just do everything and we'll curate whatever it is that comes out. We have some minor input to this, you can do with it what you like, but it's very much like with free hands. And I think this is definitely how the music business should be running. Remnant was the carrying track where we saw the best or the most accurate synergy between our 2 worlds, and was one of the things that we were really proud of and wanted to show. And we're quite happy that the label also agreed with this. So I think that this is where our 2 universes combine the best, is within this Remnant track. I also do think for future projects, and what we want to do in the future is basically explore like the sandbox idea of no play rules, building everything from scratch, working very hardly on actually generating our sounds as we go along, using field recordings, using presets, using these old boys, basically everything at our disposal to work on our own sound. I think that that's not only a mission for this project, but also for the rest of the life.
Playing live would be the next step. Fortunately, in the same day of the release, I am playing at About Blank here in Berlin for Eclectic, and definitely will play this track, which fits perfectly in a techno set. Strangely enough, it really gives a nice different edge. We started this project without even thinking we might perform together or finish a EP together. It was really just an experiment. But now it's evident to us that although if you have different background and different genre, actually you can make music together.